Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a new series which I have yet to find a name for, but I will find a name for soon. For this series, we will be covering the legend of Polybius for its inaugural episode. So let us begin. Polybius is an urban legend which states that in the year 1981, a arcade game known as Polybius, developed by a game company called Citizen, popped up in a couple arcades in the city of Portland, Oregon. Now, apparently, this video game became extremely popular, and there were very long lines to play this game, and people got into full-on fistfights just so they could play this game. According to legend, people who played Polybius suffered from side effects such as insomnia, psychosis, depression, and apparently some people who played the game even committed suicide. Some some sources state that one of the players became an anti-video game activist later on, though this varies from account to account. We do know that for certain it had psychological effects, damaging ones, psychosis, insomnia, and many, many more. Now, apparently, according to legend, this game was actually developed by the United States government, and reports state that during the short span of time the arcade game was there, men in black would go to these arcade machines and inspect it and take information and data from the machines before leaving. After around a few months, the arcade games all disappeared, never to be heard from ever again. Now, the earliest mention of Polybius goes back to August 8th, 1998 on coinup.org. Coinup.org was a website meant to archive arcade games from the golden age of video games, 1977 to 1983. Now, it was on that date of August 8th, 1998, where the page for Polybius was created. It included a single screenshot and claimed its creator was Citizen. Now, Citizen is a butchered German word, either for sense delete or sensory deprivation. Now, besides this, there is no earlier mention of the game. Some reports state that apparently people talked about the game on Usenet forums in the early to mid 1990s, but there exists no archives of any Usenet forums during that time period talking about Polybius. Polybius was brought to the general public's attention in September 2003 with an issue of GamePro magazine, who did a special in that issue with a section called Secrets and Lies, where it covered various video game urban legends, and included in that was the game Polybius. Now, it was ruled inconclusive in the end. Now, there are no official records of a game company ever known as Citizen ever existing. There exist no legal documents, copyrights for a video game company like that. Neither do there exist copyrights or any sort of documentation for a video game called Polybius during that time frame. Though in recent years, beginning in the 2010s, there were various recreations and fan works, but a game titled that or along the lines of that was seldom found during the early part of the 1980s. Many people believe that Polybius was confused for possibly 1983's Cube Quest or 1981's Tempest by Atari, or the East German game Polyplay from 1985. Now, there are many events that took place in real life that could have possibly inspired the urban legend of Polybius. The idea that the government created a video game that led to psychological effects such as insomnia, depression, and psychosis could have possibly been inspired by the real-life MK Ultra experiments during the 50s to the 70s, where the United States government experimented on its own citizens using drugs such as LSD to try and figure out these ways to mind control and brainwash people. It could have also been possibly inspired by the fact that in 1981, the U.S. Army had Atari modify their game Tank into a tank training simulator called the Bradley Trainer. And in fact, that in the 1990s, following the release of Doom 2, the U.S. Marines had a modified version of the game developed for combat situation training. Alongside that, an hour-long documentary was made by the YouTuber known as Ahoy, which garnered multiple millions of views, and it's one of the most popular videos, where he did a very deep delve into this, and he investigated the story and found that there was nothing. Even as there's, like I previously stated, there are no legal documents for any sort of game called Polybius, neither are there government documents for a operation or experiment of this sort, besides the known ones where they had pre-existing games modified for military use. Now, many people talk about a man known as Stephen Roach, who claimed to have helped create Polybius and been involved with it, though his story has been completely debunked multiple times over, especially by Ahoy, as his story conflicts over and over again, and he basically just recites the story of Polybius to with a little bit more of detail, and his story conflicts, and even some of the things he say could not have been possible given the time frame this would have taken place in, and the story just makes absolutely no sense, and there could have been no way that it actually could have been true. He conflicts himself. It don't make sense for the time period he is, and some of the things he says are just flat out wrong. That it could not have been possible. And even in an interview he did with a magazine, he just restates his original statement he made back in the early 2000s. So all in all, Polybius does not exist. I'm glad to have you all here on my show. I hope to see you all again sometime. Goodbye. Bye, have a nice time.